introduce three of our leaders who, as a result of our several years of really going through a journey of finding equity in this district, we find that it is time to have what we call a BLAC, a group of leaders, parents, teachers, and maybe one day students that can really focus on the issues of, one, how do we minimize or completely eradicate the achievement gap that our Black learners are experiencing, and at the same time figure out ways that we can recruit Black teachers and Black leaders as well. So I would like to introduce Dr. Monica Lois, Dr. Deborah McLaren, and Mr. Vincent, who will be sharing a presentation with you.
Maya Angelou once said, "Every person needs a place that is furnished with hope." Good evening, esteemed members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Escobedo, and Cabinet. I'm Dr. Deborah McLaren, Principal of Camarena Elementary School. This evening, Vincent Anthony, Dr. Monica Lois, and I would like to respectfully present our request to formally organize a district advisory council to support our Black/African American students and their families as part of our district efforts regarding equity. We would like this group to be known as the Black Learners Advisory Council, or BLAC. Next slide, please. Thank you. We want to begin by recognizing that our district vision and values have always included the ideal that we value our collective strength through our diversity. We state in our vision and values that learning is meaningful and relevant, connected with each child's individual needs, ethics, culture, and experiences, and is linked with the world outside the classroom. Next slide, please. So what is our purpose? We have coined the term BLAC, or Black Learner Advisory Council, and we want to provide and monitor the ongoing support, particularly for our Black and African American students and families in the Chula Vista School District. We want to work alongside all of our community members and stakeholders to ensure that there are unbiased practices and policies and equitable educational outcomes, as well as equal access to a quality education. Next slide, please. When we reviewed the data, which some of us have experienced some of these things firsthand, we found some very disturbing information, but we were not surprised. We looked at just two populations in just a snapshot, but we have a lot more data in our Power BI. When we identified the percentage of students that we have in Chula Vista that are identifying as Black or African American, that's approximately 5%, or 1,400 students in our district. We took a look at how our students did in ELA in 2019 on the CASP and in mathematics. Overall, they were at 61%, which was definitely much better than what was happening across our state, which was 33%, and what was happening in our county, which is 40%. So we are doing better than the county and the state, and we recognize that. However, when we just compared them to how our white students are doing in English language arts, they were at 75% proficiency in English language arts and 63% in math. Our Black and African American students are not doing so well in math at 44%. We decided to take a look even further and just remove the students who have been identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged and also are identified as having need of special education services. We found that 71% of those students were proficient on the ELA compared to their white counterparts at 82%. We also found that in mathematics, 56% of the students were proficient, which still says approximately 1 out of 2 students were not proficient compared to the white students at 85% in mathematics. So overall, what we discovered was that our Black and African American students are underperforming. And we can't use the excuse that they're underperforming because they're socioeconomically disadvantaged or they have a learning disability. Next slide, please. We also looked at the suspension data, and we had known this for some time, but some of us as administrators have felt like we have not fully grasped what this means in terms of the actions that we need to take to see this reduced. So what we found was in the suspension data, the most current data pre-COVID, is that 18% of white students were suspended for 1 day, compared to 22% Hispanic or Latino students, compared to 39% of our African American students, which only represent 5% of our district, were suspended for 1 day. If students are suspended at this rate, then it's not surprising that they aren't having the access that they need to have to their education in the classroom. Next slide, please.
Good evening. My name is Vincent Anthony. I'm the Dean of Students over at Mueller Charter School. In the book, Black Minds Matter by Dr. J. Luke Wood, he states, "There is nothing more powerful than an art of teaching that empowers those who have been downtrodden by society, those who have been systematically disaffected, monitorized, and targeted." As you can see, our goal is to function as a district school advisory group for Black and African American parents, guardians, and their children for the purpose of providing input for the local control accountability plan and participating in reviewing its effectiveness as it relates to the needs of Black and African American students. As you know, this goal is also in alignment with the district's vision and values. We know that the CVESD staff can create the community and learning that our Black and African American families and students need. Next slide, please. Our objectives. The entire educational community accepts the challenge of change and is motivated to acquire skills and values for a rapidly changing world. We create dynamic learning experiences by supporting and encouraging excellent teaching and the educational growth of family and staff. I want to bring attention to the highlighted part in this slide that says all stakeholders. That means the entire community. We are confident that with everybody putting their input together on this committee, or I should say council, we can provide the best learning environment for our Black and African American students. Next slide, please. Again, touching upon a community, we feel that it's important to engage with our families and partners to identify the needs within the Chula Vista Elementary School district community, and also touching on our relationships in the county. We have many resources here in our own backyard in San Diego County that we can collaborate with to establish networks that support our Black and African American students.
Good evening, board, superintendent, cabinet, families, and friends. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have us share this evening. My name is Dr. Monica Lois, and I humbly serve as the principal at Thurgood Marshall Elementary School. For those of you who are not aware or familiar with the Honorable Thurgood Marshall, he is the first African-American judge that ensured that all students had access to education through the Brown versus Board of Education. And tonight, what we really want to be able to do as a discussion point for our proposal is talk about how we can really best collaborate together in presenting to you all tonight, and then being able to recruit our community members, and really that involves everyone, and then really creating a united strategic plan that we can then further develop for a more strategic plan to support our students and families. One of the things that we are familiar with and we know is that the timeline is essential. And you're looking at 2 children that reside in our community here in Chula Vista. And one of the most important things is that we involve our families, we involve our teachers, we involve our staff members, and we really do that in a collective, holistic way in which we can ensure that the collective voice is included. And so we want to be able to do that. And so as we've gathered together and had some back-end conversations and discussions to be able to present this forward, and we're so thankful for Dr. Escobedo being open to the opportunity, we want to ensure that everyone has a voice, specifically our families and our teachers and our staff, to be a part of this decision moving forward. As a part of that, one of the things that we have looked into is what is the representation of our Black and African American staff as it relates specifically to Chula Vista Elementary School District. And this is based on the data that was provided to us, our new hires and their self-reporting demographics from our Human Resources Department. And so one of the things that we looked at and analyzed with the data is that looking at our classified and our certificated, our district office personnel and our principals and our staffs, in terms of the comparison for our Black African American females and males as it relates to our overall staff, is that we recognize that there needs to be some modeling of what our community does look like within Chula Vista. And so as an opportunity, we know that we can partner and collaborate with Dr. Faddis, with the Equity Committee. We can partner and collaborate with our teachers and their social justice opportunity, and we can work together. And one of the things that we know is in order to develop a holistic evidence-based strategies for recruiting and retaining more teachers of colors, decision makers carefully consider why it is that teachers' workforce is not currently diverse as it could be. And so we want to acknowledge is that our community is not as diverse, but we want to work on changing that. But we want to open partnership and how we work towards supporting our students and our families within our community. And so I would be remiss this evening if I did not acknowledge the hidden figures behind us this evening. There is actually a group of administrators and school psychologists and principals that have, and coordinators that have collaborated together to have this, to help bring this presentation forward this evening. And so this is a representation of who we are, committed to strengthening equity and access within Chula Vista. This does not include pictures of our families. This does not include pictures of our teachers, but this is a group of individuals that have really worked towards saying, how can we put this agenda forward? And so we wanted to make sure these individuals are acknowledged, but moving forward, we want to ensure that our teachers and our staff and our families are also involved in as part of this process. And so at this time, I would like to turn it back over to Deborah so that she can be able to close up our presentation this evening.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I know that over the years, I've been a principal for 17 years and I've been in education for almost 30 years. And I know one of the things that I continue to hear is about the learning gap. But one of the things that I've come to recognize over time is that the gap is more about opportunity and access and not learning. Our children are not all poor. Our children don't all have learning disabilities, but what we do have is a lack of access many times to opportunities. And so I appreciate your hearing us out in light of all the work that's going on in our district and throughout our country right now on these very important topics of social justice and anti-racism, as well as cultural responsive teaching. And I just appeal to you that you would give us this opportunity to provide our input in this council to be able to share our experiences and some of our common understandings and things that we experience to help better support all of our stakeholders in Chula Vista. And at this time, if you have any questions or things that we can address, we would like to entertain that.
Okay. Yes. First, I'd like to say that this is very exciting. I think it's long overdue. My question is, are you planning on collaborating with the Social Justice Committee that's already working? And are you looking at all at an instructional piece for the students?
So the answer to that question, as far as collaborating with with any other committees, the only other group that we have talked to has been Tony Faddis, Dr. Faddis, who is heading up the equity audit. As far as I just received information the week before last about the teachers group that is also doing that. So we would be definitely happy to work together with everyone. We want to work together with everyone because we know we cannot do this work alone. And so we want to address several different areas. We want to look at the recruitment piece, and how that's happening. What are the hiring practices? Some of us have had experiences that have been negative experiences related to the hiring practices. And so that audit will bring some of that forth, but we also want to be able to provide some insight based on our own experiences and some of the common experiences that we have just by the very nature of being Black in America. As far as cultural responsive teaching, we want to also be an advisor in terms of what kinds of materials and resources will we need in our classrooms, and what kind of training do our teachers need to be more sensitive to our Black students and understanding just how those students and the families respond to some of the interactions that they may have. And so if we can act as an advisory council and say, here are some tips, here are some things that you can do in our trainings or in the resources and trainers that we can bring in to provide that, that's another area. We also want to look at the community members that we have. We have so many community members. One of them that I work with in another capacity from a legislative perspective is Dr. Shirley Weber. And so bringing her input in terms of how the laws and the things they're putting into place to support our African American students. For instance, some of the laws that are now coming out where we cannot suspend for willful defiance. And you saw from the data who's getting suspended more than anyone else. And the state data is even more sobering when you look at how many Black males are being suspended 3 times more than any other group. And so because of that, I've been involved personally with the AXA legislative area so that we can look at things specifically related to laws. We also know in the legislature, we're looking at how we can better support our students in not being over-identified for special education services. We want to look at how the LCAP is addressing our students because we know there's a need. We see that with the data, but there's no specifics called out to Black African American students. Instead, they're kind of lumped into anybody else who's not performing. And yet, when that happens, many times they seem to be neglected as a specific target group or a specific subgroup to know how to help these students.
And if I don't mind interjecting, Mrs. Bunker, just to specifically directly answer a little bit more of your question as it relates to working together with other committees. This is our first time actually presenting this content this evening. And so moving forward, if this is something that is approved, we want to be able to collaboratively work together with all of our stakeholder groups. And so that is a part of our plan, is to be able to work together with everyone.
Great. Excuse me. And the training piece is really good. I know as a bilingual teacher, there was a lot of equity issues for a long time. And so there was a lot of training that had gone with all the staff to encourage and get people on the side to support it. So I understand that part. What about instruction for students? Is there any plan? I know that the state has to be involved in that too, but is there any plan to bring in things for our students to support the Black African American students?
Well, part of what we want to do as a committee is be able to sort of determine who those folks are that can provide those kinds of resources or information that we need about resources. So we don't believe that we're the one that's going to do everything, but we're going to be the one to act as an advisory council to say that, yes, this is a good, path to take, or these are some resources, or here's some people that we can talk to about what kinds of resources are out there that we need in our classroom libraries, or recommendations for parents, or tips on how to help your children at home. We want to act as a liaison.
Great. Well, this sounds, it sounds like a very good starting point, and I love the information you gave because, like you said, we knew there were issues, but to see the numbers really makes it significant and shows us how that we need to get on this right away. So, thank you.
Trustee Devaya.
Thank you, President Reyes. Like Trustee Bunker said, this is long overdue. I'm happy that it's finally coming to fruition, and that we have a really well-rounded team leading the path on establishing this advisory committee. I'm looking forward to working with you, to giving you the resources that you need to make sure that this committee is not just something to check a box, but actually to bring change, to bring the resources that we need to both to our staff and to our students, right? Because as we all know, if we have the staff that will model that behavior or be a model for our students, that's the best way to reach out to students sometimes. It's not through the instruction, but just to seeing a role model that they can aspire to. I know I had several role models in my career, and I looked at those models and I thanked them for where am I at today. So thank you for that work. I look forward to hearing from you, from hearing what you need to make sure that this is a committee that works, that has teeth, if you will. And you have my full support to reach those goals, and let me know what I can do to help. Thank you.
Trustee Martin.
Thank you. I want to commend the committee. This is a lot of work, and it's important work. I'm excited. When I realized you were presenting tonight, I was very much excited because I, in my continued professional development, attend meetings, and we always talk about why did you become a teacher and how come you became a teacher. And everyone always has a story about an educator that reached out to them, that was a support system. And we oftentimes don't look at why our students of color don't want to become educators. And in speaking to a student at Cornell, who's African American, he said, we're saying, you'd be a great teacher. Why don't you want to do that? And he said, because why would I want to go back to a system that doesn't welcome me and make me feel safe and make me feel protected? And that struck me. And ever since I've heard that, it's been a motivating factor for me. I think this committee is definitely something that we need to start, especially as you were looking at that suspension information. I think as a system, we can do better, become more culturally aware, and look at the behaviors as the why of those behaviors instead of automatically suspending students. So I think this is long overdue, and I'm excited. I think having the support that the students are going to be empowered, and they're going to become leaders, and that's just going to continue on in their education. So I do commend you in any way that I can support and offer encouragement or resources to you. I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Trustee Bishop.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for all the work that you've done on this. I'm super excited about this. I find this a crucial part of our district. I just shout out to Thurgood Marshall. I went to Thurgood Marshall College at UCSD, and I'm a big fan. So I've actually been looking at these numbers that you presented tonight from previous years, and I noticed that they have not changed. And I think that that is problematic, and I appreciate you bringing that as part of your presentation. So I have a couple of questions. One question I have is, I love that amazing panel of people that worked on this. That is a large group of people, and I'm excited that so many people put work into this. How many people from that group are serving on the district equity audit group. Are there people that are representing on the district side of it? I know that the social justice group is through the teachers union, but how many people from the group that you showed are on the district side speaking to the equity audits? Is anyone aware of that number?
Well, so I can speak to it. So I myself am. So we have a liaison for a lot of these different groups. So as both of the other presenters said, we have a connection to that. So this is just another opportunity for us to bring in our work to help support with the equity audit. So I promise you that'll happen.
I'm just trying to make sure that we have a diverse equity audit team. Absolutely. And that all voices are being recognized and represented.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Okay. And then I also am passionate, like Lucy, about trying to implement anti-racist curriculum. As Leslie also said, anti-racist curriculum is important to me as well. Having been a DAC representative for several years, I have sort of felt like the DAC meetings are kind of one way, where the DAC representatives are getting information from the district, but it's not so much a dialogue. And I just want to make sure that the BLAC would be more of a dialogue, because we need to hear more from the Black families, or sorry, the African diaspora families. So I'm really excited about this, and since we're at the starting stages, I really want to make sure that there's an element that we are listening and that we continue to listen. There was great feedback from the start of this, and I just want to make sure that we continue with that. And then one of the things that I have done in the last year is talk to previous students who went through this district. And I really would love to see if we can include more of that, if there's ways to contact previous students, Black students, because I think there's information and a lot of insight to be gained from their experiences. Just the few conversations that I've had were really excellent. So that's more a suggestion. But I appreciate everything, and I'm super excited about this, and I cannot wait to vote.
Thank you, Trustee Bishop. So, this is, on one hand, this is very, very exciting that we have this group of very respected professionals that are very caring and that I could feel the passion that you have. But on the other hand, it's really sad that the reason that this group is formed is because there's a huge need. There's a lack of so many things that our African American students are not having. Basically, the data that was shown, and Dr. McLaren, you showed just a speck of data. And it basically tells us that our African Americans are not being served the way they should be. Data doesn't lie. Data does not have feelings or perceptions, or data is data. And when you have 5% of our student population is African American, and out of that 5%, 39% is being spent at least for one day, that means 4 out of 10 students are being suspended for one day. Now, if we went to say, well, what about how many 2 days, or 3 days, 4 days? Think about the numbers. When the counterpart is, it's, 18%, half, not even, it's more than double in African American students. So to me, it speaks to the fact that children at a very young age are experiencing bias, or they're perceiving bias. They're perceiving lack of opportunities. They're perceiving not feeling welcome. And one of the things, as Ms. Ugarte said, it's one of the things as educators, we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome, embraced, valued, respected. So if we're saying that, and we show, and I believe that educators, I truly believe, because I'm an educator and I work with educators, and I truly believe that that's our goal. But if the data is showing us some difference, then it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And the even sadder thing is that this is not a Chula Vista Elementary problem at all. It's a systemic issue. And if you go to other parts, it's much worse. So this to me is very dear and dear to my heart, because I believe in the work of equity. And when we talk about equity, it's not about one group or the other. It's about all the groups. And to me, looking at that tiny speck of data, it makes me very sad. I'm very angry, because then we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if you have the data, and if you don't have it right now, I would like to have the data. Actually, I would like to have a precise data from Dr. Escobedo. Regarding hiring practices, I would like to know the number of African American staff members desegregated by groups. For example, what's the percentage of administrators? What is the percentage of psychologists? What is the percentage of teachers classified? And then give us a percentage. Yeah, give us a percentage compared to the total amount. And then I would like to hear from Dr. Theo. What are we doing, or what are we doing now, or what do we plan to do? And maybe that's part of the group, right? What are we doing to hire and retain African American staff? In my experience, we apply to organizations where we feel we're going to be successful. We apply to organizations where we feel we're going to be valued, respected. And I know this Chula Vista Elementary is an amazing district, but there's always room for improvements. There's always room for improvements. So I would like, as part of the plan, to know what's the plan. What's the plan to have more African American teachers? Because you know what? The reality is that students need role models. I did a study where one of the main aspects of a student wanting to go to college is when they do a college visit. But not just the college to look at the building and the facilities. When they go there and they realize that the students that attend that college look like them, speak like them, live where they live. And then they say, you know what? This college is not for somebody else. College is for me. Because if she can do it, if he can do it, so can I. And it opens our minds, our hearts, and our desire to continue. And so, to me, this group is essential. Dr. McLaren, you said something very, very true. They're not succeeding because of lack of potential, lack of opportunities. And that's where we come in, right? We come in because we're the ones that need to provide these opportunities. So we can have the best plan in the world. But when you implement it, for the plan to be successful, you need to make sure that you have the support of the leadership. You need to make sure that it is very clear not just in words or on paper, but in actions, that the work will be supported because it's important, because it's essential, it's needed. So I want to express my full support to this, to BLAC, my full support. And I also want to ask you to please invite me to work groups, invite me to your to meetings, to anything where I can participate as a board member or as a community, as an educator, as a community advocate, as a board member. Please, in fact, invite us all, invite the entire board. And
I second that.
Yeah, this is needed.
I made a note.
All right. So thanks so much for the work, and thank you for your passion. One last thing, I'm not sure if you've thought about it, is I believe I heard that you said that students right now are not part of it, are not part of it.
Hope they would be at one point, but right now they're
Yeah. So I would recommend, even if they're not officially part of it, that somehow you because the voice of students is so important. So maybe form focus groups, do somehow to get their input, to hear their voices, to hear their experiences, but also to get input on how they perceive we could improve. Thank you. I'm sorry, you're going to say something? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your words. I feel very encouraged, and I know our team will not let our folks down in our community, and we will do everything that we can to serve this particular group in our community.
Thank you, thank you. This is an action item.
Motion to approve.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.